You can't trust what you see, not even what you hear. If you're listening to this, it's already too late for me. But maybe there's still time for you. Listen carefully. Don't stop until the end. They are here. My mouth is dry. The words come out broken as I try to record this before they find me. My name is Ethan Cross. I was once a theoretical physicist, a respected scientist. Today, I'm just another fugitive, hunted by something that shouldn't exist, and by men who pretend to protect our world but only make it worse. It started almost 30 years ago, in Black Mesa, Nevada. Officially, there's nothing there but sand and silence. But I know what they hide beneath that desolate land. A monumental mistake. An open wound in the fabric of reality. We did it. We opened the doors. I remember the day as if it were yesterday. We were all gathered in that underground room, lit by cold, flickering lights. The air smelled of ozone and heated metal. The machine dominated the space, a black metallic monster with pulsating cables. It was the GRQ, Quantum Reality Generator. Our greatest triumph. Our greatest sin. They told us it was safe. They said we could manipulate the fundamental laws of the universe without consequences. That we could shape the cosmos itself to our will. Ridiculous, isn't it? Pure arrogance. But who am I to judge? I pressed the button along with the others. At first, everything seemed normal. The monitors displayed incomprehensible streams of data. There were electric hums, subtle vibrations in the floor. Then, something changed. I can't explain it properly. Not because I don't want to, but because that had no logic. The walls began to bend, as if they were made of rubber. The shadows came alive, moving independently of the light. And the voices, God, the voices, they came from nowhere. Whispers in languages I'd never heard, words that scratched at my mind like invisible claws. Some colleagues fell to their knees screaming. Others stood paralyzed, eyes glazed over. I tried to turn off the machine, but my hands trembled so badly I could barely touch the controls. By the time I finally managed it, it was already too late. The breach was open. In the days that followed, no one spoke about what happened. We received strict orders of absolute secrecy. The CIA showed up, confiscating all records, all samples. They separated us, sending each of us to different military facilities. I thought I'd be protected. I thought I'd be safe. I was wrong. Started noticing strange things soon after. Small things at first. Objects out of place. Unexplainable sounds during the night. Then came the dreams. Vivid nightmares where skeletal figures dressed in black watched me in silence. They carried bizarre tools, instruments that looked like both weapons and surgical equipment. Sometimes, I'd wake up drenched in cold sweat, convinced someone was in the room with me. But every time I looked around, I was alone. Until one day, I wasn't. I came home late at night after a long week of work. Everything seemed normal until I entered the living room. The lights were off, but something glowed in the far corner. It was some kind of geometric pattern floating in the air, slowly spinning. It looked like strands of silver, but it emanated an energy that made my whole body tingle. Before I could react, I felt a presence behind me. When I turned around, there they were. The Void Observers. They're hard to describe. Their forms are human, but distorted, as if seen through murky water. They wear black robes that seem to absorb the light around them. Their faces, I'm not sure they have faces. There's only emptiness where their eyes, nose, and mouth should be. Yet you feel they're staring at you, fixedly, like predators, studying their prey. They didn't attack me that night. They simply stood there, motionless, until I passed out from sheer terror. When I woke up, I was alone again. But I knew they had left a message, a warning. Since then, I began investigating on my own. I found accounts from people who had also seen the observers. Some mentioned visions of strange worlds, infinite landscapes where the laws of physics were completely different. Others spoke of gigantic creatures, entities hovering beyond the stars, watching us with absolute indifference. These accounts matched ancient documents I found in forgotten libraries, texts suggesting these beings had visited our planet millennia ago. But the worst came when I realized it wasn't just the observers watching me. Government agents were following me too. Men in dark suits, sunglasses, black cars. Classic cliches, I know. But when you get unexpected visits at 3 a.m. and find hidden microphones in your house, you start to understand it's not paranoia. I decided to run. I abandoned everything. My house, my job, my life. I took only a few belongings and this improvised recording. Now I'm hiding in a cheap motel on the outskirts of someplace I'd rather not name. Every unusual sound makes my heart race. Every shadow seems alive. And every time I close my eyes, I fear they're waiting for me. If you're hearing this, know there is no salvation. Not for us. Maybe for the next ones. But not for us. What we opened cannot be closed. Not completely. They're getting closer. I can feel it. I need to finish here. I hear footsteps outside. Footsteps that shouldn't be here. They've arrived. If you're hearing this, it means I'm still alive. For now. But I don't know how much longer I can hold on. The void is closing in around me, and every step I take seems to sink me deeper into it. They're everywhere now. In my dreams. In the shadows. In the reflections of windows. There's no escape. The footsteps in the motel hallway echoed like thunder that night. I froze, the recorder in my hand, as the sound grew closer. My breathing was so loud it felt like a silent scream. The doorknob began to turn slowly, creaking as if part of some collective nightmare. I didn't wait to find out who, or what, was on the other side. I grabbed my backpack and jumped out the back window, cutting my hands on shards of glass. I ran across the freezing desert until I found a safe spot, an old abandoned cabin miles away. It was there that I screamed. I screamed until I lost my voice because I knew they had found me again. They always find you. Running became my only way to survive. I switched stolen cars, slept in dirty alleys, and avoided any direct human contact. Each new city seemed more threatening than the last. I started noticing strange patterns in the people around me. Stares that lingered too long, robotic movements, inaudible whispers. It was as if the world itself was changing around me, slowly bending to the rules of another reality. But it was during a stop in Roswell, New Mexico, that everything got worse. I needed medical supplies. Infected wounds on my arms required urgent care when I saw something I was never meant to see. A military truck parked on a secondary road, far from any known base. Curiosity killed the cat, right? Or maybe it was pure stupidity. Infiltrating that operation was easier than I imagined. It seems no one expects a desperate man to be so bold. I found sealed boxes marked Project Ecliptica, confidential documents, detailed reports about the accident at Black Mesa, and what I read. God, what I read. The scientists knew. From the beginning, they knew they weren't just manipulating reality. They were summoning something they called the primordial entity, an alien consciousness that existed beyond known dimensions, observing our universe like pieces on an infinite board. They wrote about it as if it were a normal experiment, as if they were gods playing with fire. The reports mentioned that the breach opened by the GRQ wasn't an accident. It was intentional. They planned it to study these entities, learn their secrets, perhaps even control them. But something went wrong. The entities awakened earlier than expected. The Void observers weren't just guardians. They were messengers. Messengers of something much greater. I realized too late that I had left traces. When I left the makeshift facility, there were men waiting for me. Not government agents this time. These figures were different. They wore unmarked black uniforms, but their faces, my God, their faces. They were perfect masks, imitating human features, but empty, without soul, without life. I ran. I ran like I'd never run before. I barely escaped, but not without cost. During the escape, I hit my head on a rock and lost consciousness for hours. When I woke up, the hallucinations began. At first, they were quick flashes. Shadows where there shouldn't be shadows. Distorted reflections in puddles. Then came the sounds. Constant whispers, even when I covered my ears. Words in unknown languages, yet somehow they made sense. Promises whispered directly into my mind. Offers. Threats. I started seeing things that couldn't exist. Impossible structures floating in the sky. trees growing upside down, people whose faces changed every time I blinked. I knew I was losing my sanity, or maybe the reality around me was dissolving. There was one night in particular that I'll never forget. I was hiding in an isolated cave, trying to record a few more words before madness completely took over. Suddenly, I felt something wet trickling down the walls of the cave. It was black and viscous, like oil, but it pulsed as if it were alive. I touched it without thinking. The moment my skin made contact with the substance, images flooded my mind. I saw worlds that couldn't possibly exist, landscapes of impossible geometry, where mountains floated and oceans boiled. Gigantic creatures hovered on the horizon, beings that seemed made of collapsed stars. And at the center of it all, a presence, an entity. Eyes that contained entire galaxies, a mouth that sucked in the light around it. When I came to, I was screaming. My hand burned as if I'd touched acid. Black marks appeared on my skin, forming patterns that looked like alien writing. It's still here. I can feel it, growing inside me. I had to keep moving. There was no choice. But I knew I couldn't keep running forever. I needed to go back, to the beginning. Back to Black Mesa. If I wanted to understand what happened to me and maybe find a way to fix it, I had to face the place where it all began. Now I'm in a rusty trailer, driving toward the Nevada desert. Each mile feels heavier than the last. I can feel something watching me. I can't look back. I can't hesitate. If I stop now, they'll catch me. They always catch you. If you're still listening, then I haven't been silenced yet. But silence is all I hear now. Silence and whispers. They're closing in. Every shadow feels heavier, every breath harder to take. I'm not alone anymore. None of us are. The road to Black Mesa was a gauntlet of paranoia and dread. Each mile marker felt like a countdown to something inevitable, something final. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white, but I couldn't relax, not with them watching. It started subtly at first, glitches in reality, like static on an old television screen. A stop sign would flicker out of existence for a split second, only to reappear twisted, its letters rearranged into shapes that made no sense but somehow hurt to look at. Then there were the figures on the horizon, always just out of reach, their forms shifting between human and something else entirely. I didn't stop to investigate. You don't stop for things like that, not unless you want to disappear. But it wasn't just the observers or the anomalies haunting me. It was the people, or what used to be people. In one desolate town, I pulled over for gas. Mistake. The attendant didn't blink once as he filled my tank. His eyes were black voids, and when he spoke, his voice sounded like multiple voices layered together, each one whispering secrets I couldn't comprehend. He said, "You'll never close it." I threw cash at him and sped away before he could say anything else. That night, I found them. Or maybe they found me. I had parked the trailer in an abandoned lot surrounded by crumbling warehouses. The air smelled of rust and decay, but it was quiet, at least until the dreams began. This time, they weren't just visions, they were memories. Memories of the accident, but from perspectives I couldn't possibly have experienced. I saw myself standing at the controls of the GRQ, but my face, it wasn't mine. It was distorted, elongated, wrong. Behind me, the other scientists moved like marionettes, their strings pulled by unseen forces. And in the corner of the room, looming over everything, was it, the entity. Its presence radiated cold indifference, yet it burned with an intensity that scorched my mind even in sleep. When I woke up screaming, I realized I wasn't alone. Shadows clustered outside the trailer windows, writhing like living smoke. I grabbed the recorder and ran, leaving everything else behind. That's when I met her. Her name was Dr. Elena Voss, or at least that's what she claimed. She was another survivor of the Ecliptica project. Though she looked nothing like the woman in the photos I'd seen. Her hair was streaked with gray, and her eyes darted constantly, as if expecting an attack at any moment. She told me she'd been tracking others like us, people who had worked on the project and managed to escape the government's purge. Some were dead now, hunted down by agents or driven mad by what they'd seen. Others had simply vanished without a trace. Elena brought me to a safe house buried deep in the desert. Inside, I met 3 others. Marcus, a former engineer whose skin was covered in the same black markings I'd noticed on my own hand. Sarah, a linguist who had spent years trying to decode the alien language etched into the walls of Black Mesa. And Cole, a soldier turned deserter who carried enough firepower to level a small army. They called themselves the Fractured, because none of them felt whole anymore. Pieces of their sanity, their humanity, had been carved away by what they'd witnessed. Together, we pieced together fragments of the truth. The breach hadn't just opened a gateway to another dimension. It had torn open countless realities, spilling fragments of them into ours. The observers weren't merely guardians, they were scouts, sent to monitor the damage and contain the fallout. But containment wasn't their true mission. They were waiting. Waiting for the entity to awaken. Fully, Sarah showed me her research. The symbols she'd decoded formed a warning. Do not disturb the sleeper. According to her translations, the entity wasn't just observing our universe, it was dreaming it. Our reality was a construct of its subconscious, a fleeting thought, in the mind of something incomprehensibly vast. By activating the GRQ, we hadn't just poked a sleeping giant. We'd shaken the foundation of existence itself. And now, it was waking up. The more we talked, the worse the hallucinations became. Time seemed to stretch and compress unpredictably. Conversations looped endlessly, as if trapped in a feedback cycle. One moment, we were sitting around a table discussing our next move. The next, I found myself standing alone in a field of ash, staring at ruins that shouldn't exist. Was I dreaming? Had I already gone insane? Or was this part of the entity's influence, warping my perception to keep me off balance? Then came the attack. They arrived in the dead of night, silent and swift. Not the observers this time. These were creatures born from the breach itself. Twisted amalgamations of flesh and metal, their bodies defied biology and physics alike. Their eyes glowed with the same unnatural light I'd seen in the cavern. Their screams shredded the air, leaving behind a ringing silence that felt heavier than sound. We fought back with whatever weapons we had, but it wasn't enough. Marcus fell first, his body consumed by tendrils of darkness that erupted from the ground. Sarah tried to hold them off with makeshift explosives, but she was overwhelmed. Cole sacrificed himself to buy us time, detonating a cache of grenades that shook the earth and sent shards of rock slicing through the air. By the time the chaos subsided, only Elena and I remained. We fled into the desert, pursued by shadows that refused to let us go. As we ran, Elena whispered something that chilled me to the bone. This isn't about stopping the breach anymore. It's about surviving long enough to understand why it happened. Now I sit here, hiding in the wreckage of an old diner, recording these words while Elena keeps watch outside. My hand trembles as I speak, not just from fear but from the weight of what I've learned. The entity isn't just coming, it's already here. It's in the cracks between moments, in the spaces where logic breaks down. It's in me, in all of us. If you're hearing this, then maybe there's still hope. Maybe someone can finish what we started. But know this, the cost will be higher than you can imagine, higher than anyone should pay. I don't know how much longer I can hold on. The darkness is closing in again. They're here. There's no going back now, not for me, not for anyone. Every step takes me closer to the edge of something I can't comprehend, but I don't have a choice. If the breach isn't sealed, there won't be anything left to save. Not even scraps of reality. The desert stretched endlessly before us, barren and unforgiving. Elena and I moved like ghosts, our footsteps swallowed by the sand, our shadows elongated by the dying sun. We didn't speak much during those hours. Words felt useless in the face of what lay ahead. But silence was worse. It pressed against my ears, thick and suffocating, until I thought I might scream just to break it. We reached the outskirts of Black Mesa as twilight fell, painting the sky in hues of blood orange and ash gray. The facility loomed in the distance, its silhouette jagged and unnatural against the horizon. It wasn't the same place I remembered. Something had changed, or maybe it had always been this way and I'd been too blind to see it. The entrance was guarded by remnants of military barricades, rusted and crumbling, but they weren't meant to keep people out anymore. They were Warnings, signs of abandonment, of failure. As we approached, I noticed symbols carved into the metal barriers. Symbols that matched the ones on my hand. Someone, or something, had marked this place as cursed. Elena hesitated at the threshold. "You feel it too, don't you?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. She didn't need to explain. The air crackled with energy, sharp and electric, like standing too close to a live wire. My skin crawled, and not just from fear. It was as if the ground itself rejected us, pushing back against our intrusion. Inside, the facility was unrecognizable, hallways twisted where they should have been straight. Doors led to rooms that couldn't possibly exist, and lights flickered erratically, casting shadows that moved independently of their sources. The walls were covered in graffiti-like markings, alien, script mixed with frantic human scrawls. Some read like prayers, others were pleas for mercy. One phrase repeated itself over and over again. "It sees you." Elena pulled out a device she called a resonance scanner, cobbled together from scavenged parts and fragments of technology recovered from previous encounters with the observers. According to her, it could detect fluctuations in dimensional stability, the places where the breach was strongest. As we ventured deeper into the labyrinthine complex, the scanner began emitting low-frequency tones, growing louder and more erratic with each step. "This is bad," Elena muttered, staring at the readings. "Really bad. The breach isn't localized anymore. It's spreading. We're running out of time." Time. That word echoed in my mind, mocking me. Time was slipping away, unraveling like thread pulled from a sweater. Minutes felt like seconds, hours like minutes. I couldn't trust my own perception anymore. Neither could Elena. At one point, she swore she saw Marcus walking ahead of us, his burned body whispering fragments of equations he'd scribbled before his death. When I looked, there was nothing there. Then came the visions. They hit me without warning, flooding my senses with images so vivid they blurred the line between memory and reality. I saw myself standing in the control room again, surrounded by the other scientists, but this time I understood what they were saying. Their voices overlapped, speaking in languages I shouldn't have known, detailing calculations that defied logic. And behind them, towering like a monolith, was the entity. Its form shifted constantly, too massive to perceive all at once. I felt its gaze pierce through me, dissecting my soul like a specimen under glass. When I snapped out of it, Elena was shaking me, shouting my name. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with panic. "You were screaming," she said. "Like someone was tearing you apart from the inside." I wanted to tell her it wasn't pain. It was knowledge. Too much knowledge, forced into a mind that couldn't contain it. But I couldn't find the words. Instead, I nodded and pushed forward, clutching the recorder tightly in my hand. Eventually we found it. The core chamber of the GRQ, or what was left of it. The machine was a ruin, its components fused together in grotesque shapes, pulsating with dark energy. In the center of the room floated a swirling vortex, a wound in the fabric of reality itself. It pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat, and with each pulse, I felt the weight of infinity pressing down on me. That's when we saw them. The observers emerged silently from the shadows, their forms shifting unnaturally as they closed in around us. There were dozens of them this time, more than I'd ever seen in one place. Their hollow faces turned toward us, and though they had no eyes, I could feel their gaze boring into me, stripping away every layer of defense I'd built. But they weren't alone. Behind them stood something else. A figure cloaked in darkness, its presence radiating power and malice. This wasn't an observer. It was something higher. Something ancient. Elena gasped beside me, clutching her chest as if she couldn't breathe. That's one of them," she stammered. "One of the architects." Architects. The word sent a shiver down my spine. According to Sarah's translations, the architects were servants of the entity, tasked with reshaping realities according to its will. Looking at the figure before me, I believed it. Its very existence seemed to warp the space around it, bending light and sound into impossible configurations. Elena stepped forward, raising her hands in a gesture of surrender. "Please," she said, her voice trembling. "We're trying to fix this. To undo what was done." The architect tilted its head, studying her with an expressionless void where its face should have been. Then it spoke, not with words, but directly, into our minds. The voice was a cacophony of countless others, layered and discordant, yet somehow coherent. It told us that the breach could not be closed, that attempting to do so would only accelerate the collapse of reality, that the entity had chosen this world, and resistance was futile. I wanted to believe it was lying, to cling to the hope that we could still make things right. But deep down, I knew the truth. The entity hadn't awakened because of the GRQ. It had guided us to create it. We were pawns in a game beyond comprehension. Pieces moved across a cosmic chessboard for reasons we could never understand, and yet I couldn't give up. "Not yet, Ethan," Elena whispered urgently, pulling me aside. "If we overload the GRQ manually, we might be able to destabilize the breach enough to slow it down. Buy some time." "Or destroy everything," I shot back, my voice hoarse. "Maybe," she admitted. "But if we don't try, then this," she gestured wildly at the vortex, the observers, the architect, "is inevitable." She was right. We both knew it. Whatever happened next, we wouldn't survive it. But maybe that was the price we had to pay. As Elena distracted the observers, I made my way to the control panel, fighting against waves of nausea and disorientation. The symbols etched into the machine glowed brighter as I approached, responding to my touch. My hands hovered over the switches, hesitating for a moment. This was it, the point of no return. Then I heard her scream. Turning back, I saw Elena collapse, overwhelmed by the sheer force of the architect's presence. The observers closed in around her, their tools flashing ominously in the dim light. For a moment, I froze, torn between saving her and completing the task. But I couldn't save her. Not this time. With tears streaming down my face, I activated the sequence. The chamber erupted in chaos, alarms blaring as the vortex expanded violently, consuming everything in its path. The observers dissolved into smoke, and the architect let out a deafening roar that shattered the walls. I don't remember much after that. Just heat, light, pressure, and then nothing. If you're hearing this, then I've already failed. Or maybe I've succeeded. I don't know anymore. Reality is unraveling around me thread by thread, and I can feel it pulling me apart with it. There's no escape. No salvation. Only the void. I woke up. Or at least I think I did. My body felt wrong. Disjointed. As though my limbs belonged to someone else. The air was thick, suffocating, like breathing through wet ash. Above me, the ceiling rippled like liquid mercury, dripping tendrils of darkness that pooled on the floor. I couldn't tell if I was still in the GRQ chamber or somewhere else entirely. Somewhere worse. The pain came next. A searing, unbearable agony that coursed through every nerve ending, burning away whatever remained of my sanity. My skin crawled with black veins, spreading outward from the markings on my hand. They pulsed in rhythm with the vortex, each beat, a reminder that I was connected to something far greater, and far more terrible, than myself. Elena was gone. Not dead, exactly. Just erased. Her screams echoed faintly in my mind, but even those memories were fading, dissolving into static. I wanted to grieve, to mourn the loss of someone who had become my anchor in this nightmare. But grief requires humanity, and I wasn't sure how much of that I had left. The architect loomed over me now, its form shifting between dimensions, impossible to focus on for more than a second without feeling your mind fracture. It didn't move like anything natural. It flowed, oozing across space and time like ink spilled on water. Its presence wasn't just physical. It invaded my thoughts, dredging up fears I didn't know I had, secrets I'd buried deep within myself. Every moment in its gaze felt like an eternity, stretched thin until the fabric of reality itself began to tear. "You cannot stop what has begun," it said, its voice reverberating not just in my ears, but in my bones, in the very marrow of my being. "Your kind opened the door, and now the entity walks among you." "Why?" I choked out, my voice barely audible over the cacophony of collapsing reality. "Why us? Why here?" It tilted its head, an action that shouldn't have conveyed curiosity but somehow did. "You misunderstand," it replied. "This is not about you. You are insignificant, fleeting. Dust motes caught in the wake of a storm. The entity does not choose, it consumes. Your world is simply the next course in its endless feast." The words hit me like a hammer blow, shattering any illusion of control I might have clung to. We hadn't been targeted. We hadn't been special. We were just another casualty in a cosmic war we could never hope to comprehend. But the architect wasn't finished. It reached toward me, not with hands, but with tendrils of shadow that writhed and twisted like living things. They wrapped around my arms, my legs, dragging me closer despite my feeble attempts to resist. And then it touched my forehead. Pain exploded behind my eyes as visions flooded my mind, unbidden and unstoppable. I saw civilizations rise and fall in the blink of an eye, their greatest achievements reduced to rubble before they could even understand what had destroyed them. I saw stars consumed by gaping maws of darkness, their light extinguished forever. I saw the entity, not as a single being, but as an infinite expanse of hunger, stretching across realities, timelines, and dimensions. It wasn't merely alive. It was life, death, and everything in between, and I understood. The GRQ hadn't created the breach, it had widened it. The entity had always been there, lurking in the spaces between moments, waiting for the perfect opportunity to slip through. Our arrogance, our hubris, had given it that chance. And now, nothing could stop it. Except one thing. The architect released me, leaving me gasping on the ground as the visions faded. My body convulsed, racked with spasms as the markings on my hand burned brighter, hotter. I realized then what was happening. The overload sequence hadn't just destabilized the breach, it had fused me to it. I was becoming part of the entity, a conduit for its will. "No," I whispered, clawing at the marks on my skin, trying desperately to tear them away. But they wouldn't budge. If anything, they spread faster, consuming more of me with each passing second. "No!" "There is no escape," the architect intoned, its voice devoid of emotion. "You are the key, the lock, the vessel. Through you, the entity will reshape this reality as it sees fit." I wanted to scream, to fight back, but there was nothing left to fight with. My humanity was slipping away, replaced by something ancient and incomprehensible. Memories of my past life flickered like dying embers. My childhood home, my first love, the smell of rain on dry earth. All fading, all gone. And yet, even as I succumbed, a spark of defiance remained. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was sheer stubbornness. Whatever it was, it gave me one final idea. Using the last remnants of my free will, I activated the recorder again. This would be my legacy, if such a word could apply to someone like me. My warning, my apology. If you're listening to this, then I'm already lost. But maybe you can still do something. Find the others. The fractured. They'll know what to do. Tell them. I hesitated, choking back sobs as the transformation continued. Tell them the breach isn't the end, it's the beginning. Seal it if you can, but understand this. The entity is patient. It doesn't need speed. It doesn't need force. It only needs time. And time is infinite. The recorder slipped from my trembling fingers as the transformation completed. My vision blurred, then sharpened into something alien. Colors I couldn't name danced at the edges of my perception, and sounds vibrated in frequencies that made my skull ache. I looked down at my hands, or what used to be my hands, and saw tendrils of shadow extending from my fingertips, reaching out to touch the walls, the floor, the very air around me. I was no longer human. But I wasn't entirely gone either, as the vortex collapsed inward, sealing itself shut with a deafening roar. I felt the entity surge through me, flooding my consciousness with its infinite hunger. Worlds unfolded before me, vast and unknowable, each one teetering on the brink of annihilation. I wanted to scream, to cry, to beg for mercy, but those emotions were foreign to me now. All that remained was purpose. This is my last transmission, my final breath. If you're hearing this, then I've already become something else, something unrecognizable. But even now, as the void claims me, I can still feel it. watching, waiting. I don't know how long. I've been like this. Time doesn't exist for me anymore, not in any way that makes sense. Seconds stretch into eternities. Centuries pass in the blink of an eye. I see everything, all at once. The rise and fall of civilizations, the birth and death of stars, the endless cycle of creation and destruction. It's beautiful, horrifying, unbearable. But through it all there's one constant. Them, the entity. Its presence fills every corner of existence, a silent observer with infinite patience. It doesn't act directly, not yet. Instead, it lets its influence seep into the cracks of reality, testing, probing, reshaping. And I'm part of that now. A fragment of its will, scattered across dimensions. Sometimes when the weight of infinity becomes too much, I try to remember who I was before. Ethan Cross. Scientist, survivor, fool. Fragments of memories surface occasionally. A childhood summer spent chasing fireflies, the taste of coffee on a cold morning, the sound of Elena's voice trembling with fear. But they're distant, faded, like echoes from another life. Another person. And yet some part of me clings to those memories. Not out of nostalgia, but out of defiance. Because if I forget completely, then I'll truly be lost. The others, the fractured, they're still out there. I can feel them, their minds flickering like candles in the dark. They haven't given up, even though they should, even though it's hopeless. Marcus, Sarah, Cole, their names linger in my thoughts, reminders of what we once were, what we tried to do. Maybe they'll find a way to stop the entity, or maybe they'll join me, swallowed by the same abyss. Every so often, I catch glimpses of the world I left behind. Shadows moving where they shouldn't. Whispers in empty rooms. People staring into mirrors, only to see something else staring back. The breach may be sealed, but the damage is done. The entity has marked this place, claimed it as its own. And soon, very soon, it will awaken fully. Until then, I wait. Watch. Listen. If you're hearing this, if you've found these recordings, then you're already too late. The void isn't coming. It's here. It's always been here. You just didn't notice until now. I can feel it reaching out to you, brushing against your mind like cold fingers tracing along your spine. Do you hear it? The whispers? They're faint at first, easy to dismiss as imagination or paranoia, but they'll grow louder, clearer, until you understand what they're saying. It sees you. That's all it takes. Just those 3 words, spoken in a voice that isn't yours, to shatter whatever illusion of safety you've built around yourself. Once you hear them, you'll never unhear them. They'll follow you everywhere, in dreams, in reflections, in the spaces between heartbeats, until finally you'll realize the truth. You're not alone. None of us are, and when the entity comes for you, and it will, you won't have anywhere to run. Nowhere to hide, because it's already inside you, inside everyone. As for me, I'm still here, still watching, still waiting. This recording is my last act of resistance, my final attempt to warn whoever might listen. After this, I'll let go. Let the void take me completely, become what I was always meant to be. Goodbye.